Ever feel like you're just drowning in information opinions? Just stuff. Like no matter how much you achieve, it's never enough.
Well, a second-century thinker might just have the answer.
Oh, really?
And it's not about getting more information,
Oh, yeah.
but about changing how we see everything.
All right, I'm intrigued. So who are we talking about in this deep dive?
We're diving into the world of Nagarjuna,
Nagarjuna.
a philosopher a bit shrouded in myth.
Oh.
Yet his ideas still pack a punch even today.
Right. It's Nagarjuna and the Philosophy of Emptiness for this deep dive. We've got articles, research, even some ancient texts to unpack, so no pressure or anything.
Not at all. Though unpack is an interesting choice of words given what we're about to explore.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Because Nagarjuna is practically famous for this idea of emptiness or Śūnyatā.
Right.
But before anyone thinks we're going full nihilist here,
Yeah.
give us the real deal.
Absolutely. Emptiness, in Nagarjuna's view, isn't about things not existing. It's more like a... Remember that feeling when you realize your phone is just a bunch of design materials made with labor shipped across the world?
Yeah.
It's still a phone, you still use it,
Right.
but you see it differently.
Okay.
That's getting closer to emptiness. Valuable insight, not nothingness.
Okay, so not, poof, my phone is gone, but whoa, my phone is way more interconnected than I realized.
Exactly. Nagarjuna would say things lack inherent independent existence, what Buddhist thought calls svabhava, that tree outside.
Yep.
Not just poof a tree.
Right.
It's the culmination of sun, soil, seasons. This web of causes is what's called dependent origination.
Okay.
Everything comes to be this way.
So instead of existing on their own, things are defined by how they connect.
Yes.
Like that chair analogy I've heard.
Precisely. Nagarjuna himself wrote, whatever is dependently co-arisen, that is explained to be emptiness. A chair is only a chair because we've agreed on that function and form.
I like that. So it's less about the thing itself and more about our label.
Yeah.
Our need for it to be something.
And that's a key part of emptiness. It challenges us to look beyond the surface level. Now, where this gets really interesting is Nagarjuna's concept of the middle way. Imagine a tightrope walk between two extremes.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Yeah.
What are the extremes in this philosophical balancing act?
On one side, you have eternalism, the idea that things are fixed, unchanging. On the other, nihilism, the belief that nothing really matters.
Okay,
Nagarjuna's middle way says, nope, both of those are missing the mark.
interesting.
He dismantles those viewpoints by showing how much they rely on trying to define reality with language.
So it's less about finding one right answer and more about how we approach things.
Yeah.
Like, are we clinging to ideas or open to seeing how interconnected it all is?
You've got it. The middle way isn't just about the universe out there, it's about how we relate to it.
Wait, so he's saying even our deepest convictions are kind of like that illusionary chair. That's wild, and this is where things get even more interesting, right?
Yes.
Because Nagarjuna gives us the two truths.
Right. He distinguishes between conventional truth, how we experience daily life, and ultimate truth, which is emptiness.
I am.
And they're not opposed, but levels of understanding.
Hold on, so it's not that my everyday life is wrong, it's just incomplete.
Yeah.
Like, I'm playing the reality game on easy mode, but Nagarjuna gives us the cheat codes.
I like that analogy. It highlights how both truths have their place. Conventional truth, the chair, the tree, it's functional, but ultimate truth helps us see those are just labels, not the full picture.
Okay, so emptiness challenges how we perceive reality. But Nagarjuna doesn't stop there, does he?
No, he doesn't.
He takes aim at another big idea. Essentialism.
Yeah.
And this is where things get really head-scratchy for me.
It can seem that way. Essentialism is this idea that things have fixed essences, blueprints defining them. But Nagarjuna, he's like a philosophical ninja.
Okay.
He uses logic, including the famous tetralemma, to dismantle it.
The tetralemma. All right, break it down for us.
Imagine trying to define a chariot.
Okay.
Is it really just chariot? If so, it should exist even broken down into parts.
Right.
But if it's just parts, then was it ever truly chariot? Nagarjuna takes us through four possibilities. It doesn't exist, both or neither. And by assuming a fixed chariotness, he shows how each one crumbles.
So the tetralemma. Basically, Nagarjuna blew up logic to prove a point.
Yeah.
Let that sink in for a second.
Yeah.
It makes you question the very fabric of reality.
Precisely. It shakes us out of those comfortable assumptions. Clinging to fixed ideas ultimately leads to a dead end.
Okay, I'm still processing that whole chariot dismantling thought experiment.
Yeah.
But it does make you wonder if we let go of needing things to have this fixed essence. Does that
Exactly.
mean everything is up for debate?
Right.
How do we even function in a world where ultimately nothing is truly independent?
That's the beauty of it. Nagarjuna isn't saying conventional reality is an illusion.
Okay.
We still use words like chariot, tree, even podcast because they're useful. It's when we mistake those labels for some unchanging truth that we get stuck.
So it's like we're not wrong to use these words, these concepts. It's more about remembering they're just tools, not the whole picture.
Exactly. Remember those two truths we talked about?
Hmm?
Conventional truth helps us navigate daily life.
Right.
It's like that map,
Okay.
essential but not the whole territory.
Right.
The map doesn't tell you what it feels like to walk through a forest.
Okay.
Ultimate truth, that's the forest itself.
That's such a good analogy.
Yeah.
So we need both the map and the experience.
Yes.
But how do we access that ultimate truth, that emptiness? Is it just more thinking, more concepts?
Ah, you're catching on. Nagarjuna would say it's less about thinking your way there
Okay.
and more about direct experience,
Yeah.
seeing through the illusion of inherent self-nature in everything.
Okay.
And this is where things get really practical.
Practical. Okay. I'm intrigued. I thought we were neck deep in ancient philosophy here.
We are, but stick with me.
Okay.
Think about it. How much of our stress comes from clinging to things?
Oh, yeah.
Ideas, possessions, even our sense of self, as if they're fixed, unchanging. But Nagarjuna would say that's setting ourselves up for suffering.
Because that clinging, that grasping, it's like trying to hold on to water.
Yes.
It's futile, right? Everything's in flux, interconnected.
Precisely. This is where emptiness is often misunderstood.
Okay.
It's not about becoming indifferent or detached from the world.
Right.
It's about changing our relationship to it,
Okay.
letting go of that need to control, to grasp, to fix things in place.
So it's more about how we ride the waves, not trying to freeze the ocean solid.
Exactly. And that's where the true potential for freedom lies.
Okay.
Because when we can embrace the flow, the ever-changing nature of reality, that's where we find peace.
It's funny, for a philosophy that grapples with such huge ideas, it ends up being about something so simple, yet so hard.
Yeah.
Letting go.
The paradox, isn't it? And maybe that's why Nagarjuna is still relevant. Because this struggle to reconcile how we experience the world with a deeper understanding of its nature,
Yeah.
its universe.
Absolutely. It's like he's giving us this whole new operating system for our brains.
Right.
But speaking of operating systems, if Nagarjuna were around today,
Yeah.
how would his ideas apply to the complexities of the 21st century?
Ah,
Like, imagine him live tweeting his philosophy.
now that would break the internet.
Right.
But you're right. It does make you wonder, doesn't it?
Because it's not like the challenges we face now are any less complex than what people grappled with back then.
Right.
If anything, it feels like things are just getting more and more intense.
Absolutely.
Right.
But that intensity, it often stems from the very things Nagarjuna was trying to point us away from.
Yeah.
This clinging to fixed identities, to polarized ideologies, to the idea that happiness comes from accumulating more and more stuff.
Oh, don't even get me started on consumerism. It's like this endless cycle of wanting and acquiring.
Right.
But it never quite satisfies, does it?
It can't, because it's based on that misunderstanding of what truly brings lasting fulfillment. Nagarjuna would say true happiness, true liberation, comes from recognizing the emptiness of those pursuits, from letting go of that grasping and clinging.
So it's not about renouncing all our possessions and becoming monks,
Right.
but rather shifting our relationship to those things, right? Like realizing that true contentment comes from within, not from without.
Precisely. And that shift in perspective, that's where the real potential for transformation lies.
Okay.
It's about finding ways to live more skillfully in the world, to engage with it fully without being consumed by it.
This is blowing my mind. It's like we spend so much time trying to change the world around us.
Yeah.
But what if the real revolution starts with changing how we see it?
Now you're thinking like a true student of Nagarjuna. It's not easy, this letting go, this embracing of emptiness.
Right.
But it's a practice.
Okay.
And it's a practice that's available to us all.
I'm definitely feeling the need to pause and digest all of this. We've gone from ancient philosophy to modern day anxieties,
Right.
but somehow it all connects.
That's the beauty of Nagarjuna's work. It has this timeless quality that continues to resonate across centuries and cultures.
Absolutely. But before we get too carried away, I think we need to give our listeners a moment to catch their breath too.
Yeah.
Because this stuff, it's not exactly light dinner conversation.
Oh, no.
But trust us, it's worth sticking with. When we come back, we're going to explore how these seemingly abstract ideas about emptiness can actually help us navigate the very real challenges of the 21st century. So don't go anywhere. And we're back. My brain's still buzzing a bit from everything we've covered about Nagarjuna and this whole emptiness thing.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
But it's like once you see it, you start to see it everywhere.
That's the thing about profound truths. They have a way of seeping into everything once you start to really grapple with them.
So let's talk about those real-world implications.
Okay.
Because you hinted that Nagarjuna's ideas aren't just relevant to ancient debates. They might actually be essential for navigating the 21st century. But HOW? Like, give me an example. Where do we even start applying this stuff?
We'll pick a modern-day challenge, any challenge. Let's take something as universal, as constantly frustrating as political polarization.
Oh, boy.
How often do we treat our political beliefs as the truth?
All the time.
Rather than just one viewpoint among many.
Oh, especially online.
Yeah.
Like everyone's shouting their opinions into the void, convinced they've got the ultimate answer.
And that's precisely where Nagarjuna would say, hold on a second. Let's examine those assumptions. What if, instead of clinging so tightly to our beliefs, we approach those conversations with a bit more emptiness?
You mean like acknowledging that our view is just one perspective, not the be-all and end-all?
Exactly. Remember the middle way.
Yeah.
It's not about finding some bland compromise between opposing views. It's about recognizing the limitations of any view that claims to be inherently superior or truer than any other.
Okay. I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Because if we can loosen that grip on being right,
Right.
maybe there's more room for actual dialogue, for understanding different viewpoints.
Right. That's the hope, isn't it? Because when we see our own beliefs as fixed, as having inherent independent existence, it creates this us versus them mentality.
Right.
But when we apply the lens of emptiness, we start to see those beliefs as dependently arisen, shaped by a web of causes and conditions.
So instead of it being, I'm right, you're wrong, it becomes more like, okay, these are our different experiences, our different conditions that have led us to these different views.
Exactly. And suddenly there's a little more room for empathy, for curiosity. And who knows, maybe even for finding some common ground.
Okay, that's political polarization. But what about something like consumerism? Because you mentioned that earlier, and it's something I struggle with. It's like you buy the thing you're excited for 5 minutes, then it's on to the next thing. Never quite satisfied.
And Nagarjuna would say, why are you chasing that satisfaction in external things? Things that by their very nature are impermanent, always changing. It's like trying to quench your thirst with salt water.
Okay, that's a powerful image.
Okay.
So what's the alternative? Because we still live in a world with stuff, with desires, with wanting things.
Of course. And Nagarjuna isn't advocating for some kind of austere, desireless existence.
Right.
It's more about recognizing what those desires are really pointing to.
Okay.
That feeling of lack of never enough, it often stems from clinging to a sense of self that's also empty.
You mean like the idea that if I just get the right things, achieve the right status, then I'll finally be complete.
Precisely.
No.
But that sense of self that's striving for completion, it's also dependently arisen. It's not some inherent flaw in you. It's a product of conditioning, of social forces, of all sorts of things. And recognizing that is where true freedom lies.
So it's not about denying our desires, but maybe changing our relationship to them. Like seeing them with a little more wisdom, a little more emptiness.
Exactly. And that's where those two truths come back into play. On the conventional level, we still engage with the world. We still have desires. But by tapping into that ultimate truth, that understanding of emptiness, we can approach those desires with more awareness, more freedom.
Wow. So we've gone from political polarization to consumerism. And somehow Nagarjuna has something to say about both of them. It's like this secret key that unlocks a different way of seeing everything.
It's not so much a secret key as it is a practice. A practice of awareness, of letting go, of recognizing the interconnected and permanent nature of reality. And the more we practice, the more those insights start to pervade every aspect of our lives.
It's almost like rewiring your brain, isn't it? To see the world through this lens of emptiness, which honestly sounds terrifying and exhilarating at the same time.
I think that's the perfect way to put it, because it is both. It's a challenge to our usual ways of seeing, of being, but it's also an invitation to a deeper, more liberating way of experiencing the world and ourselves.
And on that note, I think we've done our due diligence for one deep dive. We've unpacked Nagarjuna's life, his concept of emptiness, and even explored how these ancient ideas could be surprisingly relevant to the very modern challenges we face.
We've barely scratched the surface, really. But hopefully we've piqued your curiosity, given you something to chew on.
Exactly. So as we wrap up, we'll leave you with this. If Nagarjuna's right, and even our sense of self, our most cherished beliefs are ultimately empty in this profound, interconnected way, how does that change how you move through the world? That's something worth pondering, and we hope you'll join us again next time as we take another deep dive into the world of ideas.